Welcome back, everybody. It's the Backmarkers F1 Show podcast, episode number 88. We're coming to you after the 2020 Spanish Grand Prix. Joined again by Tyler McDonald via Skype. Tyler, thanks for coming on again.
No, thank you. Should be a fun one. It wasn't really a fun race, but other than that, it should be at least a fun show we'll give you guys.
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's a couple days later. I mean, we did take a couple days off after the triple header, and there, yeah, like you said, there wasn't really much of a rush to get in this race recap just because there wasn't much of an exciting race to talk about. But like you said, we're going to try and make it entertaining because there are a couple of entertaining parts of the race that I do want to bring in. Before we get on to the race stuff, let's do a soccer jersey update. We talked about this last week, and I did remember to do it this week. So I've got my my Man United jersey on. If you're wondering about the player, it is one of the greatest players ever, Mr. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, that I'm wearing on the back. And I see that you're repping the race.
That's right, I'm repping the race. I got the boring Spain jersey on. So it's a Spain jersey from the last World Cup, and yeah, and a little bit of red. It's a nice kit though. It's nice and simple. I think it's good.
Yeah, it does look really good. I thought it was a Liverpool one at first when it came on.
No, you'll never catch me wearing one of those.
That's
Ever.
what I thought.
Never.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, like I said, when we get back to the regular studio with Shaker, we'll all bring our own. I know he's got a couple jerseys at home
That's
as well.
Right.
All right, so let's get into the race. I mean, I've kind of made some notes here. I kind of start off with maybe just general race thoughts, but we sort of covered that off the top. I had high hopes going into the race, and we kind of got a typical Spanish Grand Prix. Difficult to overtake. I mean, there was overtakes, but there wasn't drama, and there wasn't many crazy on-track battles. We really only saw the on-track battles afterwards in the top 10 onboards. But nevertheless, I just wanted to talk start of the race. Lance Stroll's start, basically going P4, or did he start, I think, P5?
P5, yeah.
Yeah, P5 to P3 into the first corner. It was probably one of his best starts of his career.
Yeah, very bold, and as Otmar Stammfauer said, it was all intuitive. It wasn't planned at all to go into the inside. It was just all instinct for Lance Stroll. So he showed some very good racecraft there to pop his way up to P3, and we knew he wasn't going to hold that with Bottas right behind him. But he did a very good job to keep Bottas back for what seemed like 4 or 5 laps, I would think, and really hampered Bottas's race at the start to try and catch up and challenge Lewis Hamilton. And really solidified Bottas as a P3 for that race. And it all has to do to Bottas' start. Didn't get there. The second stage of his start wasn't great. And he was worrying about Max Verstappen on the outside and kind of lost track of Lance Stroll on the inside, and he hopped in.
Yeah, exactly. It was still brilliant, though, and the fact that, I mean, I think he went a solid 3-4 laps, keeping Valtteri behind him. So it wasn't, it was a good performance by him. And then, excuse me, eventually came home 4th and 5th for Racing Point, which was good. So, yeah, Valtteri's been really struggling with starts this year, going back to Hungary and now this race again. And luckily for him, I guess not luckily, because he did lose the second place to Max Verstappen. So, I think that the starts are really going to be something that he has to work on going into the next couple of races in the upcoming triple header. But like you mentioned, yeah, it's like in that first stage of the start or whatever it is, the second stage, it's just he's losing so much.
Yeah, he is, and I don't know what it is, whether if he has to kind of redo his clutch, find the right bite point on the steering wheel to reduce the wheel spin that he's getting. But yeah, it's not ideal for Valtteri because if he's not qualifying first, we kind of need him to pass Hamilton on the front stretch to get up to P1 and make the race interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And he even admitted himself after the race that championship is kind of slipping away, which is, I mean, we knew it, but it was really kind of sad to hear it officially from Valtteri. So it's not over yet, but I mean, we all really know what's going on here. So we'll get to Mercedes a little bit more toward the end of the show. But I wanted to touch on Red Bull. Interesting race for them. I again, in the preview, I talked about how they could be in with a good chance because of the whole hot temperatures, tire situation. And then Mercedes kind of, I guess, surprisingly but unsurprisingly, figured out their issues and managed the race beautifully. But still, I think Verstappen, a P2, very good finish, split both Mercedes. But I was going to ask you, what did you think, or first of all, did you hear Max's radio message between him and GP? Max basically telling them, let's focus on our race, forget about them. And then GP basically telling him, keep your head down, Max, which was code word for shut up and drive.
I did see a glimpse of that. I don't remember the full conversation, but I mean, Maxi last week was talking about drinking water and making sure you're hydrated. So that's right, beat the heat, stay hydrated, says Max says. But I think Max did nothing wrong there. He's trying to tell his team to focus on their own race and not worry about Mercedes, and maybe they were worrying a little too much about them. I think Max knew that the race win was out of question. It was trying to get P2 to split them. And nothing wrong with the banter back and forth for team to driver, I don't think.
Yeah, I was okay with it. I saw most people on social media had the same reaction, and just maybe to fill in the context, we could play a little bit of the radio for the viewers when I get into editing.
So obviously we're nowhere near undercut range to Lewis, so control the peaks early on. I'll keep you posted on Bottas this time.
No, but how about we just focus on our race first, yeah, instead of looking for Lewis? Because clearly on the soft tire we were not as fast as them, so we just make sure we do our job and let them do their job.
Have you seen the two cars behind you, mate?
Yeah, they're slow.
Get your head down, Max, please.
It was basically that same conversation that they had, that Max wanted to focus on his own race. But what was funny is that they didn't air this on the broadcast, and I found this on YouTube afterwards, that after Max's message of, let's focus on ourselves, forget about Mercedes, GP gets on the radio and he's like, do you see the two cars behind you, mate? And Max is like, yeah, they're really slow. And if people don't remember, at the time it was Valtteri behind him and then Lance Stroll, so he was not concerned at all with the pressure from behind. So I like it. And you saw, like, in comparison to Ferrari, which we're going to get to in a little bit, the relationship between driver and engineer is a very positive one, a very healthy one, and that's what a championship team looks like.
Yeah, that's what you need, especially when you have, well, you mentioned Ferrari, with Sebastian, and, basically want to strangle each other, it seems like, on the radio half the time.
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess we could just get into that now.
Yeah, why not?
If we touched on Red Bull enough, but, oh, man, yeah, it was a good race for him, I guess.
Very good race. He was the driver of the day, in my opinion, the fans' opinion. To pull off the one stop when not a lot of people thought he could, and to be, what did he finish? P7? Yeah. Which is his best finish of the year, I believe. Or did he have one in his first
P6
race
in Hungary.
Oh, right, that's right. But pretty close.
Yeah.
It's been the best highlight of the last month and a bit for Seb. So no, I thought it was great by Sebastian. Basically calling his own card, and you can tell how upset he was when they said, can you go to the end on this set of tires? And he's like, well, like I asked you guys if we were doing a one stop, and you said we don't know. Now you're doing it. Like, I would have preserved the tires better. So that's what saw him kind of fall back a little bit. I mean, he probably could have got P6. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
If he would have taken care of the tires properly, but he didn't know it was his team that was kind of screwing him, which is unfortunate because you think Ferrari with Charles out, all your focus is on Seb. You only have one car to worry about, and they're still kind of screwing that up. So it's pretty unfortunate for Seb.
It's like when a parent like asks a child, like, oh, like, you hungry right now? I'm making something. And they're like, no, and then they come 20 minutes later and they're like, I'm hungry. They're like, God damn, like, you should have told me when I was cooking. So it was like a similar situation when he's like, well, you should have told me before I was pushing for, 3-4 laps and taking however many life out of the tires. But you did 37 laps on the soft compound.
Yeah, more than Pirelli said that it was able to do, so it's impressive.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So, yeah, and I mean, the radio messages, obviously everybody was able to hear during the broadcast, and then, on YouTube you can find the extended ones as well. And during even qualifying, too, he was radio silent on the radio. There's not too much communication. And I don't know what it is with the Ferrari engineers, too. Like, I was just watching some, well, I wouldn't say old races last night from 2018. And it's like, I just can't believe, like, where it's gotten to between Vettel and Ferrari in just such a short amount of time. But it's just a lack of communication, and it's just always like, yeah, okay, understood. Like, even when Leclerc's engine failed, he's like, engine, just shut off, failed. They're like, copy? He's like, well, what should I do? Should I turn it on myself? Or they're like, well, let me get back to you. And he's like stuck in the middle of the track.
No, yeah, exactly. The communication hasn't been there for Ferrari. And I wonder if there's going to be some sort of change in the off season of different team principals or whatever, not team principals, sorry, race engineers and race strategists that flop ways with Ferrari. But we'll see. I know this is not on the topic of radio, but I just want to mention Matteo Binotto mentioned that the next step for Mick Schumacher will be an F1 race seat, which is very interesting because there's Cameron Eilot and Robert Schwartzman in F2 who have been two of the best drivers in F2, both Ferrari Academy drivers, and are ahead of Mick Schumacher in the standings. So, I mean, I could see Schwartzman's a rookie, so I could see him, if he doesn't win the championship this year, staying one more year in F2. But Cameron Eilot deserves a seat, in my opinion, over Mick Schumacher. Obviously, Schumacher comes with more sponsorship. But it'll be interesting to see if there's seats available for them. Is Kimi retiring? Can you slot one at Alpha and maybe one at Haas and tell Haas to pick one driver and can the other? So it'll be interesting. That's the Ferrari situation for next year in terms of their driver academy. But they got a lot of potential down in F2. Like 3 solid drivers in Schumacher, Schwartzman, and Eilot.
Yeah, I got an idea who to can at Haas. It's in my notes. I'll get to it later. But yeah, no, you're right. I haven't been following F2 as closely as I did last year. But you're right. Schwartzman's been having a really good season, and those two better than Schumacher. Obviously, he's the bigger name, and we all want to see him in F1. But I think it's just going to take some time. There's no rush for him. He's still incredibly young, and so maybe even another year in F2, and then like you said, one of those Ferrari B teams will be able to bring him in. Alfa Romeo has been linked with Nico Hülkenberg with his relationship with Fred Vasseur, so that would be a good fit for Alfa Romeo. I think, as I said last week, it looks like Kimi is most likely done at the end of this season. We'll see what happens, but I think Ferrari's got a pretty promising young driver lineup. Now they just need to bring the team all together and be able to give those guys a decent car.
Yeah, no, exactly. And as I mentioned, every time we talk about the driver market, we need more teams in F1 to support all these drivers because there's too many drivers that aren't going to be able to have a seat, especially with all the young talent coming up.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny you mentioned you were talking about Kimi. I had this weird dream a couple nights ago where it was the Spanish Grand Prix, and somehow Kimi was leading the race in the Alfa Romeo, but as he got to the final corner, he spun. But then the 2 Mercedes passed him, but then one of the Mercedes spun as well. But he still ended up on the podium. Anyways, it was a weird one. Maybe
that's a wild race. Let's hope that actually happens. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I don't know how an Alfa Romeo got into a podium place, but anyways, that was a strange one. But yeah, it should be interesting what happens with those young drivers coming up. Okay, well let's talk about Haas because it's on my mind, so I wanted to get to it. And last week we talked about Romain Grosjean, I think it was last week after the 70th anniversary Grand Prix. And we were mentioning about his hot button radio messages about anytime a driver gets close to him, and he did it again. I don't know if you saw this, but I noticed it in the top 10 onboards. Giovinazzi, the battle that they had, I think it was turn 1 and then turn 2. Giovinazzi pulled off just a fine move, racing move, completely within the limits. Grosjean barely went off track, they didn't even touch, and Grosjean's on the radio oh man, mate, he hit me off the track. He's honestly, I've tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a great driver. He's been on the podiums, but he's really starting to piss me off as of late.
Yeah, that was, I think he was, I swear he was doing that, for the banter. He was just doing it to be watch them freak out over this. Because, it wasn't even close. He had 2 wheels off the track. I was like, what? So, he has to be doing it on purpose just to screw with people. No, I think it's hilarious if he is doing it that way.
I hope he is, because if he's genuine, then he needs to immediately resign as president of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, because he does that, and then he almost kills Kimi Räikkönen down on turn 1 when he swerves in his way. It's what are you doing, man?
Yeah, no, it's I still can't believe he's the president of the Grand Prix Drive. I think that's the biggest meme of 2020 right now.
It definitely has to be. Oh my God! Just imagine those meetings there. Kimi involved and Ricciardo, the battle he had afterwards. And what popped in my mind too was because I wanted to make a note on Leclerc's seatbelt thing. Just remind me to get to that afterwards. What reminded me when that happened, I immediately thought of Grosjean in 2017 when they were in that drivers' meeting, and he's like, "Charlie, can you undo the belts or not?" That's the first thing I thought of.
Yeah, yeah. But a simple question, Charlie. Yes or no? I mean, can you undo them or no?
No. Okay. And then,
but Hamilton was.
Yeah, he like
blames
threw him
Hamilton.
under the bus, and Hamilton's like, "Why do you care?" Like, yeah, I'm just saying that. Excuse me. If he's being serious, and I hope you're right. I hope that he's just feeding into the banter and the memes. But if he's serious, man, like somebody needs to sit him down and be like, okay, look, just because somebody gets close to you, doesn't mean that. I mean, I don't know if you saw when Raikkonen and George Russell had their little battle going into turn 2, and Raikkonen had like a huge lick of oversteer and almost ran into the side of him. If that was Grosjean, he would have had a stroke in the car. he would have pulled the car over and got out and just like threw his hands up in the air. So it's like, man, like it's one thing to be, like legit dangerous driving, but it's another thing when somebody just goes wheel to wheel. Like that's what we want. So I hate these drivers where they complain about sometimes like, oh, like they don't let us race, and then when they do let you race, you're immediately on the radio talking about black flags and report this to the steward. So yeah, he's just been getting on my nerves lately.
That's fair. I don't blame you.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of a Charles Leclerc's seatbelt issue, and I'm not sure that many people maybe noticed or picked up on this, but apparently when he was trying to restart his engine or whatever he was doing, somehow his seatbelts became undone, which I'm not really sure how it happened because I would assume that he's just trying to do some switches on the steering wheel. But anyways, they came undone, and then he drove, I think, about a lap and a half or so without undone seatbelts, and no penalty came, during the race or even after the race. And a lot of people online actually were saying that, this was a really dangerous maneuver. He should be even getting a race ban. So what did you think of that whole incident, or did you even pick up on it?
I did pick up on it. A race ban's a little aggressive. What I would do is be a fine for Ferrari and a reprimand on the super license for Charles Leclerc, which really doesn't mean anything. But it shows that they acknowledged it. But I'm sure it'll be brought up at the meeting for the F1 Drivers Committee there, and Romain will take care of it.
I'm sure he will.
But it's very dangerous. Don't get me wrong, especially when you're going full tilt. It's not an after the race thing. But he did come in and they retired the car. So I mean, I guess there's that. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't. Granted, I haven't looked at the regulation. But anyways, I just noticed that when I was looking on Twitter after the race and then the days to follow that, a lot of people were actually bringing this up, and some people were even demanding a race ban, which I agree. I think it's a little excessive. I haven't looked at the rules and what the rules state itself. Maybe that is a fair punishment according to the regulations. But at the end of the day, I think, like you said, I think maybe a fine or something. But I was just surprised that nothing really came of it, no investigation. Maybe they just felt really bad for Ferrari that day and just said, leave it alone. They got a P7 finish, but yeah, I'm interested to see if they're going to make any mention of it in the next driver's briefing.
I'm currently looking at a driver's guide to safe motorsport on the FIA site. So I'll try to find that in 2 seconds just to see if there is anything.
That might be like a 100-page document.
It's 25, surprisingly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I know. Who'd have thought? Nothing on there though, so I'm going to find the FIA standard 8854/98, which is safety harness, updated in 2012. Regulation. Jeez, they don't make this hard to find.
Yeah.
Or they make this hard to get to because it isn't really working.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe if somebody finds it and drops it in the comments below, the exact legislation or whatever it is. Yeah, those documents are super confusing because they have like those Section 8.3 B, C.
The FIA website sucks. So that's not good either. So yeah, so if anyone finds that and gets the regulation, please drop it in the comments below so we can all kind of have a clearer view of it because I don't have the time to find it right now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but no penalty as of right now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was interesting.
Maybe we'll get Renault losing their minds and they'll protest.
Well, maybe not, because now they're best friends because Ferrari also protested Racing Point. So,
Well, yeah,
they're
it's true.
trying to stick together.
It's
But
true.
yeah, interesting times. I mean, other than that, that those really were my only race notes. I don't know if you had any other thing from the Spanish Grand Prix to add.
Um, surprisingly, McLaren struggling as of late, especially Carlos Sainz. Hasn't really been up to what we saw him at the start of the season. Do you think that's a concern for McLaren? Because they're in that fight for third, fourth, fifth, that whole area. Is it a concern for them that they maybe haven't been performing as well as we saw at the beginning of the year, or is it just kind of a minor blip, do you think?
I think it's a minor blip, and I touched about it a little bit in my five thoughts after the race, that it was probably one of Carlos's better races of the year. And even though it was a quiet race, I put him driver of the day. And it was a close one between him and Vettel, because I do agree Vettel did a really good race, but I think it's more just a blip. It hasn't been as good as last season. I mean, if you remember last season, his race pace was always what was really good,
Hmm.
and now he's even been struggling with that. But on the same time, it's been sort of, kind of unfortunate strategy calls, slow pit stops, those types of things that have lost him, one or two positions. And it's actually been Lando Norris who's been the more consistent and been, getting the bigger results. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. They put in a new power unit, which helped a lot. So I think that it really just, maybe this race was the one that he needed just to get a good finish under his belt. And then, going into the next triple header, it should be a much better for them. But, McLaren are still sitting pretty good in the championship. But, with Racing Point now kind of past this whole protest, they've got their fine. They've pretty much got their points back now from the penalty. I think it is McLaren to step up a little bit if they want to secure fourth.
No, that's a good point. I was just curious on your thoughts on McLaren, because they have been a little disappointing as of late.
Yeah.
I would like them to kind of be up there a little higher with fighting with Racing Point. But at the same time, could be just a couple race struggle, and we'll see what they do for the next triple header.
Yeah, totally agree there. So I think they'll be okay. But that battle for fourth, fifth, and sixth, you throw Renault in there as well, should be pretty good as we head toward.
Well, even third.
Even third, yeah.
Ferrari's in third right now.
I almost forgot.
Yeah, I know. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, exactly.
They keep squeaking out results here and there.
Yeah, I think that luck will eventually run out for them, though. So.
Well, you'd think, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, my final a note that I had, and it's not really relating to the race, but although it made news after the race, I think heading into the Spanish Grand Prix, they were talking about a quali mode ban starting from next season, and then all of a sudden they pushed that forward and said from Spa onwards they're going to introduce these quali bans. So, yeah, I'm going to get your thoughts on it first. And first of all, do you think it's going to help anything? Because, it's made to... I mean, really, if we're being honest, it's made to limit Mercedes' advantages in qualifying, because their qualifying advantage is pretty much almost larger than it was if we're going back to 2014 and 2015. It's 1.2 seconds faster than the next car behind, which is Red Bull. So essentially, this is to limit their competitive advantage in qualifying, because that's really been where they've been able to stretch their legs a lot. So do you really think that this is going to do anything to help?
I think it will, short term. I think you'll see Mercedes go from 1 second ahead to 5/10 ahead, which doesn't really solve the issue. I guess it's a little bit better. Do I think Mercedes will find a wraparound or a loophole through this? Absolutely. And they'll still go 1.2 seconds faster than everyone. But I like the idea. I like the idea of pushing it there. They realize that the season is hanging in the balance. There's not much to look forward to for the championship. So like, you know what? Let's throw this in there.
Yeah.
So I don't mind. I don't mind them throwing it early into Spa, and I hope it makes a big difference. At least the first few races, to help these other teams try and be a little bit closer and make it look a little less, Mercedes and then everyone else, because F1 needs that. It's not good for the sport for Mercedes to dominate.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think that my initial reaction was, yeah, okay, I get why they're doing it. And realistically, this is the FIA's job. I mean, they did it when Ferrari was dominating. They always tried to throw different things at them to slow down their stranglehold on the sport. So in a way, it is their job to breach the competitive level between the teams. I honestly just don't think that this one is going to work because, yes, Mercedes quality mode advantage will be gone, but so will all the other teams as well. So if you look at the power unit advantages that Honda has made in the last couple of years to the point where now they're the second fastest engine on the grid, and they're able to use that quality mode as well, now that's going to be gone for them. So I'm not sure how much, extra they have in reserve, but now that advantage is gone for them. So we could maybe even see the same gap maintained between Mercedes and Red Bull. Maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Some of the other teams, like Alfa Romeo said flat out, like we don't even really have a quality mode, so to them it's not going to be much of an effect. But the other thing that we have to think about as well is that without quality modes now, so if you look at Mercedes, they probably really only use their party mode Strat 2 engine, I would say maybe for 3 laps of quali. If we're thinking, 2 laps in Q2, or I'd probably say like 1 lap in Q2 and then 2 in Q3. Q1 they can easily get by on a smaller engine mode. But now that they're not having to use that, they can save probably an extra 15 to 20 laps of that mode for the race because they're not going to be using all of that and putting stress on the engine.
I thought it was banned in the race as well.
I think it's banned in the race, but they can still turn up the engine to a higher setting, right? So yeah, I'm thinking of it in terms of that because in the race, like they don't want to turn the engine up to a higher setting. It might not be that qualifying mode. It just might be a higher energy deployment. It might be just something that burns a little more fuel, but they're able to maybe turn that up for an extra couple of laps because now they don't have to use it in qualifying. So even Toto Wolff, I think, came out and said that, like, you know what, this might actually be better for us because we don't have to worry about using it in qualifying. We can just save it for the race. And the race is where you can argue that they're actually a little bit closer than in qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, if he was looking at it, he didn't really need to use it in qualifying in the first place. So
yeah,
I don't know. I guess he just wanted to prove a point.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, hopefully it brings everything a little closer. I mean, it's all we can hope for because I think everyone's tired. Like, obviously, Ferrari had their dominance, Red Bull had their 4 years, and now Mercedes have had their 6. But 6 is a little too much. I mean, this is what kind of drives people away from the sport, right? You want it always to be a question of who's going to win the race. Every race, and not going to be okay, well, it's most likely going to be Mercedes, one of their 2 drivers, and they know that's it. So yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah, and it's 7th year essentially because
yeah, that's
I
right.
mean, if we're being honest, it's no chance that there is a chance that Max could put on some sort of challenge, but realistically, it's going to be Hamilton unless reliability gets in the way or he starts crashing into people. So it's going to be 7 years. Constructors is most likely done as well. So I hate to be pessimistic in that regard, but I had little hopes that maybe the 70th anniversary Grand Prix was the start of something, but I was cautiously optimistic, and eventually I was right because Spanish Grand Prix again. But this has been on my mind since a couple weeks ago, actually, since we started to see what the form of the season was going to end up. When you think back to 2018, because we started our show in 2018, what a season that was.
Yeah.
I mean, just to start our whole channel on that season was brilliant. But I've been reviewing it the last couple of days and weeks and looking at old races, and I remember that season is like every time you turned up to watch the qualifying session, you had no idea who was going to be on pole. You had 6 cars from 3 different teams that could hypothetically be on pole. And then when you got into the race, like I was looking yesterday, we rewatched the Canadian Grand Prix from 2018. You look at the top 6, Vettel, Hamilton, Raikkonen, Bottas, Verstappen, Ricciardo, all in race-winning cars going back and forth against each other. And then Kimi won a race, and Daniel won a race, and Max won a race eventually, and then obviously Vettel and Hamilton's championship battle. So I just think back to that and go, why the hell did the FIA change the regulations for 2019? If we would have just kept those same cars, I mean, we could have probably gotten some classic championships up until the big changes in 2022.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. That was a great season.
Yeah.
Vettel bottling it at the end of the season and whatever. But that'd be great if everything would have stayed the same. It's unfortunate. Even last year we had some sort of, it wasn't too bad with Ferrari's illegal engine. Mm-hmm. This year it seems like it's not even close, and that's the big struggle. I mean, this reminds me of almost like 2014, 2015 dominance.
Yeah. And, we try and keep it entertaining and hoping that there's going to be entertaining races, but it's just the problem is that when you know that the championship is essentially over, and you know that it's really just between the same team and the same car, it's boring. And it's not a Mercedes thing. Like, this isn't to bash Mercedes. Like you said before,
No.
you could plug in Red Bull, you could plug in Ferrari during their years of dominance. It's like we want to see competition.
Yep, exactly it.
So yeah, it's a problem. But I don't know. Next year's probably gonna end up being the same as well. So I guess we're just gonna have to be patient and hope for classic races like we got in 2019.
Yeah, hope for a couple of rain races.
Yeah, that too.
Throw some rain in there.
Yeah, at the very least, we are going to some exciting tracks.
Mm-hmm.
As we look ahead in this triple header, we got
Some new tracks.
Yeah, Spa, going to Monza, and then Mugello, and then afterwards going to Portugal, and I think possibly Imola.
Russia's in there.
Yeah, Russia's in there as well. And you were talking about just before we got on the air that Turkey's possibly going to be added to the calendar to sort of wrap up a 17, 18 race calendar season. So at the very least, we're going to tracks that we haven't been to in a while or that we've just never been to at all.
Mm-hmm. No, it'll be interesting. Hopefully that gives some sort of, I guess, positive end to the season. You know, maybe some other, maybe they realize, oh, there's a bunch of tracks we can go to and we're going to extend the season to 25 races or whatever. You know, who knows?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, I guess that really does it for the Spanish Grand Prix. I don't know if you had anything to add or any other F1 related news that you had.
No, nothing as of yet. I'm sure something will break after we release this.
Yeah. Oh, the only final point that I had was, and I'll touch on this on the preview a little bit next week. All 10 teams have re-signed the Concord agreement, so until 2025, all 10 teams are locked in, which is good. Good news.
Is it 2025? That's how long it is?
Yeah, it's. I thought it was longer. I thought it was like a 7-year thing, but yeah, 2025. It's, what is that? 4 years ish.
Yeah, it's longer than I thought it was.
Oh yeah, you thought it was shorter?
I thought it was shorter. I thought it was only 2-3 years.
Oh, okay.
But I don't really pay much attention to the Concord agreement, so that's huge because I wasn't sure what Haas was going to do.
Yeah.
So it's good that they're staying.
Yeah, I'm happy for them as well, and Ferrari as well too. I mean, I know they're never going to probably, excuse me, they're probably never going to leave, but you know they were always kind of floating that idea out in the media, maybe just as a bargaining chip. But all 10 teams were able to agree. So yeah, that's good news from that standpoint.
Bring more teams in. Find a way to get more teams in. Like, it's crazy. Get more teams in the sport.
That budget cap hopefully will help us out with that. But we need more teams for sure.
Like, even if it's, you know, they're not works teams, like, just bring some teams in. I don't know. Anyways,
yeah. All right, well, that's going to do it for this podcast and this edition of the Spanish Grand Prix review. Yeah, like I said, a couple days later, but you know, after the triple header, you want to take a little bit of time off, and then, you know, with the race being the way it wasn't like you were, how should I say it nicely? It wasn't like you were kind of chomping at the bit to talk about the race. So
yeah,
you know, we just waited a couple of days and wanted to just do a more relaxed, banter-like episode. It seems like Shaker's work schedule is all sort of back to normal, so I think we'll maybe try and connect next week and do just some sort of podcast, maybe just to catch up with him, see what he's been doing, and then look ahead to the next triple header, because that's coming up next week.
Yeah, should be fun. More racing right around the corner.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to give a quick shout-out, actually, because I was pointing to the Max Verstappen artwork just a couple of minutes ago. I just wanted to give a shout-out to the artist who did that. Follow them on Twitter. You can also go to redbubble.com. It's where I actually bought this poster print. I've got a couple stickers on the way as well. It's a great website. If you go there, you can pretty much get anything. You can get pillows, you can get stickers, you can get workbooks, t-shirts, anything. And it's a relatively cheap price as well. And quality is really good. Like this poster print, I got it for $8 Canadian. And the poster print is excellent quality. It's got a nice little laminate to it. And of course, the artwork is fantastic. So, you know, I'm not sure if the artists, they probably get some sort of a little bit of a cut from the purchases. But I just thought it was a really unique little poster. So shout out to them for creating that.
Perfect. Looks good.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks again. Appreciate your time. I know you got a busy day. You got to get to your work and do your thing. So I appreciate you coming on, and we'll reconnect then for next week.
Sounds good. We'll see you next week. Should be a fun little week. Hopefully some fun news comes out to give us something to talk about next week.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks so much again for joining us. And yeah, we'll see you next week for the preview for the Belgian Grand Prix. Take care.